In the heart of a shimmering, crystalline palace that floated amidst swirling clouds of violet and gold, an alien queen sat on her throne. Her name was Queen Velara, ruler of the Xantherians, a species known for their ethereal beauty and unparalleled wisdom. The palace itself seemed alive, its walls pulsating with soft light, as if they were breathing in rhythm with the universe. Today, however, the grandeur of the setting was overshadowed by tension thicker than the nebulae outside. Queen Velara's daughter, Princess Lysira, stood beside her mother, her luminous silver hair cascading down her back like liquid moonlight. She had wide, curious eyes that sparkled with intelligence but also carried a hint of sadness. Across from them stood a man named Kieran, his presence so out of place it almost felt surreal. He was human, clad in simple earth attire, worn boots, faded jeans, and a leather jacket that looked more suited to a dusty road trip than an intergalactic royal court. His dark hair was tousled, and his green eyes darted nervously between the two women before him. Kieran wasn't supposed to be here. A few days ago, he had been living a quiet life as a mechanic on a remote space station, fixing ships for travelers passing through the outer reaches of the galaxy. Then came the day when one such traveler turned out to be none other than Princess Lysira herself, and everything changed. Lysira had crash-landed near his workshop after her ship malfunctioned during what she claimed was a routine diplomatic mission. Kieran didn't believe a word of it. Princesses didn't just show up at random space stations unannounced. But he helped her anyway, patching up her ship while exchanging stories about their vastly different worlds. Over time, they grew closer, perhaps too close for comfort, given their circumstances. When Lysira finally revealed who she truly was, Kieran found himself whisked away to this alien realm against his will, accused of something he couldn't quite understand yet. Now, standing under the weight of Queen Velara's piercing gaze, Kieran felt sweat trickle down his spine despite the cool air humming around him. The queen leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Why do you not like my daughter?" she asked, her tone calm but laced with authority. It wasn't really a question. It was an accusation wrapped in velvet. Kieran blinked, caught off guard. I never said I didn't like her," he stammered, his hands instinctively balling into fists at his sides. "That's not true." The queen raised an elegant brow, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Lysira shifted uncomfortably, her glowing skin dimming ever so slightly. Her lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but no words came out. "You have avoided her calls?" Queen Velara continued, her voice growing colder. "You dismissed her attempts to bring you here willingly, and now, when finally brought before us, you stand there trembling like prey cornered by a predator. Explain yourself." Kieran swallowed hard, searching for the right words. How could he explain something even he barely understood? Yes, he cared for Lysira deeply. She was kind, brilliant, and unlike anyone he'd ever met. But there was also the matter of their differences, not just cultural or biological, but existential. She belonged to a world where people lived for centuries, communicated telepathically, and held power over entire star systems. He was just Kieran, a nobody from nowhere special. "I'm not good enough for her," he blurted out suddenly, surprising even himself. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the crystal walls. Even Lysira froze, her eyes widening in shock. Queen Velara tilted her head, studying him intently. For a moment, Kieran thought she might laugh, or worse, strike him down with some unseen force. Instead, she leaned back in her throne, her expression softening ever so slightly. "And why would you think that?" she asked, her voice quieter now, almost gentle. Kieran hesitated, then sighed. "Look at me. Look at this place. This isn't my world. I don't belong here. Your daughter deserves someone who can match her brilliance, someone who understands your customs and traditions, not some guy who fixes broken engines for a living." To his surprise, Lysira stepped forward, her cheeks flushed with emotion. "Kieran, how can you say that? You saved my life. You taught me things about courage and humility that I never learned in all my years growing up here. That has value. Courage and humility won't change the fact that I'm completely out of my depth." Kieran shot back, frustration creeping into his voice. "Do you know what it's like to feel like you're constantly stumbling through a maze you don't even recognize? Every time I try to connect with you, I end up feeling like I failed somehow, like I'll never measure up." The argument hung heavy in the air, thick with unresolved emotions. Queen Velara watched silently, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. Finally, she rose from her throne, her movements graceful yet commanding. "Enough," she said firmly, raising a hand to silence them both. "This is not helping. Kiran, follow me." Without waiting for a response, she turned and began walking toward a set of ornate doors at the far end of the chamber. Reluctantly, Kiran followed, glancing back at Lysira, who looked torn between anger and despair. As the doors slid open, revealing a long corridor bathed in golden light, Kiran couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would change everything. The corridor led them to a smaller, more intimate room filled with holographic projections of distant planets and constellations. Queen Velara gestured for Kiran to sit on a floating bench-like structure, which adjusted itself to accommodate his weight. She took a seat opposite him, her posture relaxed but still regal. "You humans are fascinating creatures," she began, her tone thoughtful. "So fragile, yet capable of immense resilience. Tell me, Kiran, what is it that makes you believe you cannot adapt to our ways?" Kiran frowned, unsure how to respond. "It's not just about adapting," he admitted. "It's about belonging. I've spent my whole life feeling like I don't fit in anywhere. Now I'm thrust into this incredible world where everyone seems to know exactly who they are and what they're supposed to do. Meanwhile, I'm just flailing." Velara nodded slowly, as if considering his words carefully. "And yet, my daughter chose you. Out of everyone in the galaxy, she sought your company. Why do you think that is?" Kiran opened his mouth to reply, then closed it again. He hadn't considered that angle before. Why had Lysira chosen him? Was it mere coincidence? Or was there something deeper at play? Before he could answer, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, accompanied by a low rumble that echoed through the palace. Both Kiran and the Queen turned toward the source of the disturbance, their expressions shifting from curiosity to alarm. "What was that?" Kiran asked, rising to his feet. Velara's eyes narrowed, her calm demeanor cracking for the first time. "Trouble," she murmured. "Stay close." As they hurried back toward the main hall, Kiran couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and excitement bubbling within him. Whatever was happening, it was clear that his journey was far from over, and neither was the story of his connection to Princess Lysira. The tremors grew stronger as Kiran and Queen Velara reached the grand hall, where chaos had already begun to unfold. Guards clad in shimmering armor rushed past them, their weapons glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. Lysira stood at the center of the room, her hands raised as she attempted to calm the panicked courtiers who darted about like startled birds. Her silver hair seemed dimmer now, her usual radiance dulled by worry. "What's going on?" Kiran asked, his voice rising above the commotion. Queen Velara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to one of the guards, barking commands in a language that sounded like music but carried the weight of authority. The guard nodded sharply before sprinting away. Only then did the Queen turn back to Kiran, her expression grim. "A breach," she said simply. "An unauthorized vessel has entered our airspace. Could be pirates or worse." Kiran felt his stomach drop. Pirates? Worse? He wasn't equipped for this kind of danger. All he wanted was to fix engines and live a quiet life, not fend off intergalactic criminals. But as he glanced at Lysira, who was now looking directly at him with those piercing eyes, something inside him stirred. Whatever was coming, he couldn't just stand aside. "Where do you need me?" he asked, surprising even himself with the determination in his voice. Lysira blinked, momentarily stunned by his words. Then, a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "You're not trained for combat," she said gently, though there was a flicker of pride in her gaze. "Stay here. Protect my mother." Before Kiran could argue, she spun around and joined the guards heading toward the palace's outer defenses. Queen Velara watched her go, her jaw tightening visibly. For a moment, Kiran thought she might follow her daughter, but instead, she turned to him. "She loves you," the Queen said abruptly, her tone softer than before. "Do you understand what that means?" Kiran hesitated, unsure how to respond. I think so," he finally managed. "But why does it matter right now? Shouldn't we be focusing on?" "It matters because love is power among our people," Velara interrupted. "It binds us, strengthens us. If you truly care for Lysira, then you must trust her and yourself. Doubt will only weaken you both." Her words lingered in Kiran's mind as another tremor shook the palace. This time, the vibrations were accompanied by a loud crash from somewhere outside. Alarms blared, filling the air with an urgent, pulsating rhythm. Kiran clenched his fists, trying to steady his nerves. Meanwhile, Lysira led a squadron of royal guards through the crystalline corridors toward the palace's eastern wing, where the intruders had breached the perimeter. The walls around them flickered anxiously, their usual soothing glow replaced by erratic flashes of red and orange. She could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to choke on, but she pushed forward, her resolve unshaken. As they approached the breach point, the scene unfolded before them. A group of heavily armed beings clad in dark, jagged armor poured into the palace grounds. They moved with purpose, their weapons firing beams of searing light that shattered the crystalline structures with terrifying ease. Among them was a towering figure, a hulking alien with skin like molten lava and eyes that glowed with malice. "Who are they?" one of the guards whispered, his voice trembling. "They're mercenaries," Lysira replied, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Hired guns. Someone sent them here." "For what?" another guard asked. Lysira didn't answer. Instead, she focused on the leader of the group who was scanning the area with predatory precision. His gaze landed on her, and a cruel smile spread across his face. Well, he growled, his voice deep and guttural. "The princess herself. This makes things easier." "Easier for what?" Lysira thought, her heart pounding. Before she could react, the mercenary raised his weapon, aiming directly at her. Instinctively, she threw up a telekinetic shield just in time to deflect the blast. The force of the impact sent her stumbling backward, but she quickly regained her footing. "Retreat!" she shouted to her guards. "Fall back and regroup." But the mercenaries were relentless, advancing with ruthless efficiency. Lysira knew they couldn't hold them off indefinitely. They needed reinforcements, and fast. Back in the grand hall, Kieran paced nervously, his mind racing. Queen Velara sat silently on her throne, her eyes closed as if meditating. Every fiber of Kieran's being screamed at him to act, to do something. But what could he possibly do against invaders armed with advanced weaponry? Then it hit him. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a mechanic. And mechanics knew how things worked and how to break them. "Your Majesty," he said suddenly, turning to the queen, "do these crystals power the palace?" Velara opened her eyes, studying him curiously. "Yes. Why? If I can disable some of them, maybe I can create a diversion, or trap the intruders," Kieran explained hurriedly. "I've dealt with systems like this before. Let me try." For a moment, the queen simply stared at him. Then, without a word, she rose from her throne and gestured for him to follow her. Together, they descended into the lower levels of the palace, where the crystalline core pulsed with raw energy. The hum of the crystals was deafening, vibrating through Kieran's bones as they approached. "This is the heart of the palace," Velara said, her voice barely audible over the noise. "Be careful. One wrong move and you could bring the entire structure down." Kieran nodded, swallowing hard. He examined the intricate network of glowing conduits, searching for a way to manipulate the system without causing catastrophic damage. As he worked, memories of his days tinkering with old ships flooded his mind. This wasn't so different, really, just on a much larger scale. "I hope this works," he muttered under his breath as he adjusted a series of switches. Slowly, the lights in the palace began to dim, plunging the upper levels into semi-darkness. Simultaneously, sections of the floor near the breach point shifted, creating barriers that trapped several mercenaries in isolated pockets. "That should buy us some time," Kieran said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But it won't hold forever." Queen Velara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "You've done well, Kieran. Now, let's see if we can use this advantage to turn the tide." Above them, Lysira noticed the changes in the palace's defenses almost immediately. The mercenaries were disoriented, their movements slower as the dim lighting disrupted their vision. Seizing the opportunity, she rallied her guards and launched a counterattack. Using her telekinetic abilities, she hurled shards of broken crystal at the enemy, striking with precision. One by one, the mercenaries fell, until only their leader remained. He snarled in frustration, his fiery form crackling with rage as he charged toward Lysira. She braced herself, summoning every ounce of strength she possessed to erect another shield, but the strain was evident on her face. Just as the mercenary leader was about to break through, a familiar voice rang out. "Hey, ugly!" Both Lysira and the mercenary turned to see Kieran standing nearby, holding a makeshift weapon cobbled together from palace debris. With a grin that bordered on reckless, he fired the device, sending a burst of energy straight at the mercenary. The attack wasn't fatal, but it was enough to stagger the creature, giving Lysira the opening she needed. Summoning all her power, she unleashed a concentrated wave of telekinetic force, slamming the mercenary into a wall. He collapsed unconscious as the remaining guards secured the area. For a moment silence reigned. Then, slowly, cheers erupted from the surviving defenders. Lysira turned to Kieran, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. "You came," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Of course I did," Kieran replied, stepping closer. "I told you. I'm not good at fitting in, but I'm pretty great at showing up when it counts." Lysira laughed, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're more than that," she said, reaching out to take his hand. "You're brave, clever, and utterly impossible to ignore. How could I ever let someone like you go?" Kieran smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the battle-scarred palace around them. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he belonged here after all. But as the cheers faded and the dust settled, a new question loomed. Who had sent the mercenaries? And what did they want with the Xantherian royal family? As the adrenaline from the battle began to ebb, Kieran and Lysira stood together amidst the wreckage of the palace's eastern wing. The air was heavy with smoke and the faint hum of damaged crystals struggling to maintain their glow. Despite the chaos around them, there was an undeniable sense of connection between the two, a fragile but growing bond forged in the heat of conflict. Queen Velara arrived moments later, her regal presence commanding immediate attention even in the disarray. She surveyed the scene with a critical eye, her expression unreadable as she took in the unconscious mercenary leader slumped against the wall. "Secure him," she ordered sharply, gesturing to the guards who quickly moved to restrain the hulking figure. Turning to Kieran and Lysira, her gaze softened ever so slightly. "You both fought well, but this is far from over." Before anyone could respond, one of the royal advisors rushed into the room, his face pale and his voice trembling. "Your Majesty, we've intercepted communications from the mercenaries' ship. It wasn't just a raid. They came for something specific." Lysira frowned, stepping forward. "What do you mean? What could they possibly want?" The advisor hesitated, glancing nervously at Kieran before addressing the queen. "They were searching for the Silverian Codex." A collective gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. Even Kieran, who had no idea what the Codex was, felt the weight of its significance in the sudden tension that filled the room. "The Silverian Codex?" Lysira repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But that's impossible. It's been sealed away for centuries. No one knows how to access it." Queen Velara's expression darkened, her sharp eyes narrowing as she processed the information. "Not entirely true," she said slowly, turning to look directly at Kieran. "There is one person here who might hold the key." Kieran blinked, taken aback by the sudden focus on him. "Wait, what? Me? I don't even know what this codex thing is." Velara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she motioned for everyone to follow her back to the grand hall, where the remnants of the courtiers still lingered, murmuring anxiously among themselves. Once they were seated, the queen addressed the group, her tone grave. "The Silverian Codex," she began, "is an ancient artifact created by our ancestors. It contains knowledge beyond comprehension, secrets about the universe, including the origins of life itself. For generations, it has been locked away, guarded not only by physical barriers, but also by a fail-safe mechanism tied to a single individual capable of unlocking it." She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "That individual is chosen not by bloodline or title, but by resonance, by fate." Kieran shifted uncomfortably under her intense gaze. "Okay, but again, why are you looking at me like I'm that person?" "Because you've already interacted with it," Velara explained. "When you adjusted the crystalline core earlier, you unknowingly activated a dormant sequence linked to the codex. The mercenaries must have detected the energy surge and targeted us accordingly." Lysira turned to Kieran, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "You did all of that without realizing it? I thought I was just messing with some fancy wiring," Kieran exclaimed, throwing up his hands in exasperation. "How was I supposed to know I was triggering some cosmic treasure hunt?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Kieran truly was the key to unlocking the codex, then he was now a target, not just for the mercenaries but potentially for anyone else who sought the power contained within. Later that evening, After the initial shock had worn off, Kieran found himself alone with Lysira in one of the palace gardens. The space was serene despite the turmoil of the day, with bioluminescent plants casting soft hues of blue and purple across the grounds. They sat side by side on a bench carved from living crystal, neither speaking for a long moment. "So, let me get this straight," Kieran finally said, breaking the silence. "Some ancient book thinks I'm special enough to be its chosen opener of things. Meanwhile, every bad guy in the galaxy probably wants to use me or kill me to get to it." "Great." Lysira placed a comforting hand on his arm. "You're not alone in this, Kieran. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." He looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Why do you keep sticking up for me? I'm just a mechanic from Earth. You deserve someone who can actually keep up with your world." Lysira smiled softly, leaning closer. "Because you see me, Kieran, not as a princess or a symbol, but as a person. That's rare even among my own people. And because—" She hesitated, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Because I love you." Kieran froze, his heart skipping a beat. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a distant alarm blared, shattering the tranquility of the garden. "What now?" he groaned, rising to his feet. Lysira grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the source of the disturbance. As they ran through the corridors, they soon discovered that the mercenary leader had escaped custody, and worse, he had taken control of the palace's main defense systems. "This isn't possible," Lysira muttered as they watched monitors displaying hijacked security feeds. "Only someone with intimate knowledge of our technology could override the controls like this." Kieran's stomach churned as realization dawned. Unless they had help from the inside. The accusation hung heavy in the air. Both turned to see Queen Velara standing nearby, her expression unreadable. For the first time, doubt crept into Kieran's mind. Could the Queen, the very person who had brought him here, be involved? Before either of them could confront her, the lights flickered, plunging the palace into darkness. When they came back on, the mercenary leader's voice echoed through the halls, amplified and distorted. "Hand over the human, or watch your precious kingdom crumble," he growled. "Your choice, your highness." Kieran felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. His role in this story was far from over, and neither was the danger. The palace plunged into chaos once more as the mercenary leader's ultimatum reverberated through the halls. Guards scrambled to secure key areas, while courtiers huddled in fear, their whispers blending with the hum of failing systems. Queen Velara stood motionless for a moment, her face unreadable, before turning to Kieran and Lysira. "We must act quickly," she said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Kieran, you are the key to stopping this, but not in the way they expect." "What do you mean?" Kieran asked, his pulse racing. "If I'm some kind of cosmic lockpicking prodigy, shouldn't I just stay far away from whatever that codex thing is?" "No," Velara replied firmly. "The Silverian Codex isn't merely a book. It's alive. It responds to intent, not skill. If your heart aligns with its purpose, it will protect us. But if greed or malice drives those who seek it—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Lysira stepped closer to Kieran, gripping his hand tightly. "You can do this," she whispered. "Trust yourself, and trust me." Kieran nodded, though doubt still gnawed at him. How could he possibly be trusted with something so powerful? Yet, looking into Lysira's unwavering eyes, he felt a flicker of resolve. He had come too far to back down now. Queen Velara led them deep into the palace, past corridors lined with glowing runes that pulsed faintly as they approached. The air grew colder, heavier, until they reached a massive chamber sealed by an intricate crystalline door. At its center was a pedestal, atop which rested the Silverian Codex, a shimmering artifact that seemed to shift between solid and liquid forms, radiating an otherworldly light. "This is it," Velara murmured, her tone almost reverent. "The Codex has been waiting for someone like you, Kieran. Someone unburdened by our world's expectations, yet guided by pure intention." Before Kieran could respond, alarms blared again. The mercenary leader's voice boomed through the palace once more. "Enough stalling. Hand him over, or prepare for destruction." "They're breaching the chamber," one of the guards shouted, panic evident in his voice. "Go," Velara urged, pushing Kieran toward the codex. "Touch it. Let it guide you." Kieran hesitated, glancing back at Lysira. Her expression was a mix of fear and hope, her lips mouthing the words, "I believe in you." Taking a deep breath, Kieran stepped forward and placed his hands on the codex. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him, flooding his mind with images. Galaxies forming, stars dying, civilizations rising and falling. Amidst the torrent, one thought became clear. The codex sought balance, harmony. It would grant power only to those who used it wisely. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open, and the mercenary leader stormed in, flanked by his remaining forces. His fiery form crackled with rage as he raised his weapon, aiming directly at Kieran. "Step away from the codex, human," he snarled, "or die where you stand." Kieran didn't move. Instead, he focused on the connection he felt with the artifact, channeling its energy into a protective barrier around himself, Lysira, and the Queen. The mercenaries fired, but their blasts ricocheted harmlessly off the shimmering shield. "You think you can stop me?" the leader roared, charging forward. But as he reached the barrier, tendrils of light erupted from the codex, wrapping around him like chains. He screamed in agony as the artifact siphoned away his violent intentions, leaving him crumpled on the floor, unconscious. The remaining mercenaries froze, unsure of what to do next. Before they could regroup, Queen Velara signaled her guards, who swiftly subdued them. As the immediate threat subsided, the room fell silent except for the soft hum of the codex. Kieran released his grip on the artifact, feeling drained but strangely calm. The weight of what he had done, and what he had become, was beginning to settle in. Lysira rushed to his side, throwing her arms around him. "You did it," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us all." Kieran managed a weak smile, pulling her close. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me the courage to try." Queen Velara approached them, her expression softer than ever before. "You have proven yourself worthy, Kieran, not because of your actions alone, but because of the love and loyalty you share with my daughter. That bond is what truly matters." For a moment, Kieran thought about asking what would happen next, whether he'd be forced to stay, to take on some grand destiny tied to the codex. But then Velara surprised him. "You are free to choose your path," she said gently. "Stay here, among us, or return to your world. The codex will remain safe, and so will our people. What matters now is your happiness." Kieran looked at Lysira, seeing the same question reflected in her eyes. Did he belong here, in this extraordinary place filled with wonders beyond imagination? Or did his roots lie elsewhere, among the simple joys of fixing engines and watching sunsets? "I don't need to choose right now," he said finally, smiling. "Wherever I go, I know we'll find a way to make it work. Together." Lysira beamed, nodding eagerly. Together. In the days that followed, repairs began on the damaged palace, and peace slowly returned to the Xantherian realm. Kieran stayed, learning more about their culture, and finding unexpected joy in teaching others about Earth's quirks and inventions. Meanwhile, Lysira introduced him to the wonders of the galaxy, showing him planets he'd only dreamed of visiting. Their love story wasn't without challenges. They came from different worlds, after all, but it was built on trust, understanding, and a shared belief in creating something beautiful out of chaos. And as they stood together under the twin moons of Xantheria, gazing up at the endless expanse of stars, Kieran realized that home wasn't a place. It was the person standing beside you. Kieran and Lysira's love story didn't end with the defeat of the mercenaries or the securing of the Silverian Codex. It was only the beginning. Over time, their bond deepened, transcending the boundaries of their vastly different worlds. Kieran embraced his role in Xantherian society, not as a hero but as a bridge between cultures, sharing Earth's traditions while learning the intricacies of Lysira's people. Lysira, in turn, cherished every moment spent exploring the universe by his side, her heart swelling with pride at how far he'd come from the humble mechanic she'd met on that remote space station. Their wedding was a grand celebration unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The crystalline palace sparkled brighter than ever, its walls alive with cascading lights that mirrored the joy radiating from everyone present. Guests from across the stars gathered to witness the union of two souls who embodied hope, resilience, and unity. Kieran wore traditional Xantherian attire, a flowing robe adorned with glowing runes, while Lysira shimmered in an ethereal gown that seemed woven from starlight itself. As they exchanged vows under the twin moons of Xantheria, their connection felt almost tangible, as if the universe itself paused to honor their love. In the years that followed, their family grew in ways neither of them could have imagined. They welcomed not one child but many, each unique in their blend of human and Xantherian traits. Some inherited Kieran's knack for tinkering, dismantling palace technology before they could even walk. Others displayed Lysaira's telekinetic gifts, levitating toys across rooms with mischievous grins. Their home buzzed with laughter, chaos, and endless curiosity, a testament to the harmonious blending of their two worlds. Raising their children became both a challenge and a delight. Kieran introduced them to Earth customs, camping trips on holographic planets, bedtime stories about brave knights and daring astronauts, and taught them the value of humility and hard work. Lysaira shared the wisdom of her ancestors, guiding them through meditation and lessons on empathy, ensuring they understood the importance of using their gifts responsibly. Together, they created a household where questions were encouraged, creativity flourished, and love was the foundation of everything. As their children grew older, they began making names for themselves across the galaxy. One became a renowned diplomat, fostering peace between warring species. Another pursued science, discovering new forms of energy that revolutionized interstellar travel. Yet another took up art, creating masterpieces that captured the beauty of both Earth and Xantheria. Despite their diverse paths, all carried the same core values instilled by their parents: kindness, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of unity. Through it all, Kieran and Lysaira remained inseparable, their partnership stronger than ever. They faced challenges together, political tensions, occasional misunderstandings, but always emerged more united, drawing strength from their shared journey. Even Queen Velara softened over time, eventually becoming a doting grandmother who delighted in spoiling her grandchildren with ancient Xantherian tales and enchanted trinkets. When asked about the secret to their happiness, Kieran would simply smile and say, "It's not about finding someone perfect, it's about building something real." Lysaira would add, "And never being afraid to grow together." Their legacy wasn't just in the lives of their children or the changes they brought to their worlds. It was in the proof that love knows no bounds. Whether beneath the skies of Earth or among the stars of Xantheria, Kieran and Lysaira showed that true connection transcends differences, creating something timeless and extraordinary. And so, their story continued, not as a tale of struggle or destiny, but as a celebration of love, family, and the infinite possibilities of a life lived together.